I spent 10 days aboard Canada's largest warship, and for some reason, they even let me drive this billion-dollar vessel in the Atlantic Ocean. Accompanied by Danish and French navies on this unforgettable voyage, I saw how disaster can strike without a warning, why sometimes the smallest details can make the difference between life and death, and what it takes to turn chaos into order when your only chance of survival is to abandon ship. Given this rare 10-day opportunity, my goal was to immerse myself in all aspects of the ship's operations, from dissecting its weapon systems to documenting its highly automated engineering spaces, and from helping with dishwasher duty to shadowing the ship's commanding officer, who was not at all tired of all my questions.
I'm not sure. We've had many conversations while you've been aboard.
But kidding aside, I explored every single hole that they let me film. And that's how I came across a few things I didn't expect to see. Like why there was an 18th century style wheel that could actually steer this massive ship. And how there was a big flight deck and a sizable hangar, but no helicopters on board. But by far, the biggest surprise was that Canada's biggest warship could do pretty much anything, except go to war. But the reason is not what you think. This is HMCS William Hall, a ship so automated that during normal operations, just 2 people can monitor and control the majority of its engineering aspects. This level of automation allows this 6,600-ton ship to operate with a small crew of just 65 sailors, about a third of what would have been otherwise required. But what's really unusual is that a warship of this size only carries 2 50-caliber machine guns and 1 25mm naval gun on the bow, which is the ship's biggest weapon on board. That's it. No missiles, no torpedoes, and not even a close-in weapon system. No wonder this ship has been criticized for being underarmed. The thing is, this ship was never meant to combat traditional adversaries. It was built to fight geography. And when you look at it through that lens, HMCS William Hall is actually armed to the teeth. About 40% of Canada's total landmass and over 70% of its coastline is in the Arctic, a harsh and inaccessible environment due to its extreme climate, ice sheets, and iceberg-infested waters. And I really mean it when I say that.
That's a lot of iceberg.
So instead of mine countermeasures, this ship has iceberg countermeasures. This is Naomi, an ice service specialist who monitors satellite imagery and ice charts on a daily basis to track drifting sea ice and icebergs. The information that she provides helps navigators plan the safest routes through these ice-covered waters. The ship's radar screens can also be filtered to show more or less details, depending on the size of the objects that a crew is interested in. By the way, this is the radar's blind spot, the portion of the radar's line of sight that's blocked by the ship itself. For this reason, multiple radars are installed in different areas, so collectively there will be no blind spots. The last line of defense against icebergs are lookouts. These are sailors who look through binoculars to ensure nothing in the visual range gets missed. Fun fact, the binoculars with the fanciest strap are used exclusively by the ship's commanding officer. Back to the Arctic. HMCS William Hall can break ice, but it's not merely an icebreaker.
This ship is an Arctic offshore patrol vessel. That's why we use the term AOPV. We didn't call it purely an icebreaker because its mandate extends to doing patrol missions all up and down the coasts of Canada and even to international operation.
Basically, from November to July, the ship patrols the Atlantic and Pacific coasts, or travels south to collaborate with the US Navy and US Coast Guard to combat drug trafficking in the Caribbean. It's only during late summer and early fall that the ship goes to the Arctic to keep an eye on that area. But in 2024, less than 40 ships transited through the Northwest Passage, which makes you wonder, why would Canada spend $7 billion building 8 of these ships to monitor such little traffic in the Arctic? If you go back to 2007, when the concept of Arctic Offshore Patrol Vessel, or AOPV, was conceived, the program was initially met with heavy criticism and skepticism. This was due to the then friendly geopolitical situation with Russia and the perception of a low strategic threat in the Arctic. The critics called these ships Frankenboats and slush breakers for being too slow, too lightly armored, too unstable, and ultimately useless, since they were not fit for combat. However, the ship's utility has since been validated by a dramatically altered geopolitical reality. Renewed international interest in the Arctic, fueled by its vast resources, and the growing accessibility of the Northwest Passage, continues to rise. This is evident in the number of transits done through the Northwest Passage, which has gone parabolic in the 21st century, intensifying the race for the Arctic. China's unprecedented deployment of all its 5 icebreakers in August 2025 into the Arctic region, and the United States' recent decision to build 11 more Arctic security cutters speaks to this competition for dominance in the high north. It's in this new environment that the role of the AOPVs in asserting and maintaining Canada's presence and sovereignty is undeniable. There were 38 crossings in 2024 through the passage, which is a very low number. But as sea ice retreats, this route is expected to become a major commercial artery by 2050, which is why we have to be ready for the unexpected. This is not just a fire drill. It's a fully fledged multinational rescue exercise.
So we have the French, the Danish, the Germans, and of course the Canadians all operating together in this area of water.
It may not look like it, but there was a lot going on.
So what you have here right now going on is 2 helicopter operations doing extractions of injured personnel, obviously a simulated injured personnel, a simulated fire aboard our ship, boat operations to transfer equipment back and forth between various ships on the other side of this of our ship over here.
The Danish patrol ship Laue Kok actually had a really cool maneuver. It would do a turn to create a wind and wave shadow before deploying or retrieving the boat, which made it a lot more comfortable for those on board.
And right now, it's reaching the final stages where we're doing helicopter hoists off of ships to carry them over to medical personnel on a different ship.
Internally, AOPVs have a few clever firefighting design features. For example, all critical doors throughout the ship are equipped with proximity sensors, which can be remotely monitored. There are also magnetic holders that keep the doors open to facilitate movement until somebody pushes the red release button. But in case of a fire, one simple click would simultaneously release all open magnetic doors throughout the ship. Oh, and see those little doors? Those tiny flaps allow a fire hose to run through, while the main doors stay shut. And that keeps heat and smoke from spreading. There are so many clever design details like this throughout the ship, and combined with everyday conversations we had with the crew, keeping track of it all was almost impossible. That's where this little device became a lifesaver. This is the Plaud Note Pin, our video sponsor, a pocket-sized note taker that can record your conversations as simply as this. The note pin can then generate structured notes, whether you want a summary, a list of follow-up tasks, or a to-do list with the name of the people automatically added in, since the note pin can recognize the different speakers. You can wear it on your wrists or clip or pin it on your clothes, or just snap it in place magnetically. But my preference was to wear it around my neck. It looked stylish to me. Now here's the cool part. Once you have a question, you can just ask Plaud, which uses the power of AI to query the note pin's entire memory for an answer, By the way, your old audio files can also benefit from all these features by simply being uploaded, whether on the web interface or on Plaud's mobile app. The security is also locked down. Your notes are saved offline directly on the pin, fully encrypted, so no one can access your data, even if you lose it. But you also have the option to sync securely through Plaud's encrypted cloud. 40 days of standby time, 20 hours of continuous recording at the push of a button. Say goodbye to note-taking and grab yourself a note pen using the code NWYT10 at checkout to get $10 off. As the multinational rescue exercise started to wind down, a couple of decks below, the kitchen crew were getting ready for the best part of the day. Unlike typical naval ships where enlisted sailors and officers eat in separate areas, on board HMCS William Hall, everybody eats in one cafeteria. It doesn't matter if you're a junior sailor or the commanding officer. This encourages interactions among all crew members, and even contractors and other embarked personnel like us, which actually was great because it allowed us to speak with a lot of different people while enjoying our meals. The food is served in buffet style 3 times a day, but snacks and coffee are available 24/7. The seating is somewhat limited, so priority is given to sailors who are on watch to get in and out quickly, and then the rest of the crew follow behind. The chefs prepared amazing food every single time. Honestly, I was really impressed. And we also got a tour of the galley on Friday, which is pizza and chicken wing day. One of the reasons why AOPV platform is the largest warship in the Royal Canadian Navy is because of endurance, and that includes food supplies. You see, nearly 1/4 of Canada's ocean territory is in the Arctic, where no ports exist to refuel or resupply. Since HMCS William Hall must have enough range with sufficient remaining reserves to do a round trip to Resolute Nunavut, one of the most northern communities in Canada, the ship must be able to carry up to 4 months' worth of food, which are stored in a very convenient location. As soon as you step outside the galley, you're in the dry storage area. The fridges and freezers are also located on the same floor, just around the corner. This simple design choice makes the kitchen crew really happy. On older ships, food storage rooms could be 1 or 2 floors down, which is not very convenient when you need to haul all those ingredients up and down ladders to prepare hundreds of meals every single day. Another unique tradition on this ship is how cleaning and dishwashing responsibilities are divvied up among all departments on a daily basis. Whether it's mopping the cafeteria floors, which is done after each meal, or rinsing the plates and running the dishwasher. When you have a small crew, everyone chips in. AOPVs are great platforms for parties because they break the ice. But for sailors, icebreaking is very counterintuitive.
I spent my entire career learning to avoid dangers and to not impact upon things with my ship to keep it safe.
To defeat ice, AOPVs have 3 reinforced areas: the bow, the stern, and the ice belt. The bow is the strongest part of the hull and is reinforced with thicker steel. The bow has a curved shape to push ice down and to the side, where the ice knife bears down the weight of the ship onto the ice to break it. As a Polar Class 5 icebreaker, this ship can break first-year ice up to 3.9 feet in thickness, allowing it to operate year-round. The ship must also be able to break ice when moving in reverse, which is why AOPVs have a reinforced stern. Since wind and currents push the ice into the sides of the ship with a lot of force, the area around the hull, a bit above and below the waterline, which is known as the ice belt, is also reinforced to prevent the hull from being crushed under the pressure. For extra caution, this class of ships has dual hulls below the waterline. This void space protects the interior of the ship in case the hull gets crushed. There are access points in various parts of the ship that allow maintenance teams to access this void space. But what if the ship's hull freezes to ice during a long stop? AOPVs are equipped with a healing system, which can pump water between two massive ballast tanks to roll the ship from side to side. If stuck in ice, this rocking motion breaks the hull free, so the vessel can move again. As for the ship's propellers, they're too deep in the water and safe from being frozen. Aside from icebreaking, the cold Arctic temperatures also necessitate a number of other considerations for this ship. You see this? These tiny wires heat up to prevent ice from covering the bridge windows. This is also why AOPVs were designed to have an enclosed forecastle to protect foredeck machinery and sailors from harsh Arctic conditions. The radars that are out in the open, and even the main gun, need to be kept warm to prevent freezing. We even experience firsthand what would happen in an absolute disaster when everyone has to abandon ship. After heading up to the flight deck, they do a muster where all personnel are physically accounted for. But in the Arctic, you can't just get into any life raft. You'd freeze. And that's when I realized why before departing Halifax, we had loaded 2 of these orange vessels onto the ship. This is a fully enclosed lifeboat which can carry up to 60 sailors and enough ration and water for 5 days. You see these cables? Those need to be hooked up to the lifeboats at all times to keep their batteries warm. Otherwise, during a 3-month patrol in Arctic temperatures, the batteries could drain and you wouldn't be able to start up the lifeboat's engine. We also did man overboard exercises, which are even more time sensitive in Arctic waters. You've less than 15 minutes to be rescued or you're dead. That's why everyone on board was issued an emergency transmitter to have on them at all times. In case you fall in the water, the transmitter would send out a distress signal. There are 2 28-foot multi-role rescue boats on board, which can be launched and recovered from dedicated bays on either side of the ship. Once spotted in the water, someone on the bridge uses this little paddle and keeps it pointed at the man overboard. This helps the rescue boat to know which way to steer during the recovery. We actually got to ride in one of these boats on the high seas. The shock absorbers in the seats make for a very smooth ride. But the ocean always reminds you who's really in charge. Out in the open waters, conditions can get rough. And for AOPVs, it can get even worse, because the round bow that's required for icebreaking operations makes the ship much more susceptible to rolling from side to side, which can get you really seasick. We had the roughest conditions on the second day, with waves approaching 13 feet. Wearing motion sickness patches throughout the trip definitely helped, but my stomach was still filing complaints. Now, how the crew of the other 2 ships in our formation were feeling, I don't really want to know. But this makes you wonder, how can HMCS William Hall handle helicopter operations in such rough sea conditions? HMCS William Hall is equipped with retractable active fin stabilizers that can be deployed to reduce the ship's roll motion by up to 90%. Of course, during icebreaking operations, the fins are retracted, not just because they could be damaged by ice, but also because the water is typically much calmer in icy waters. And sometimes, it's pure glass. AOPVs were designed to feature a bear trap, helicopter haul down, and securing system. But the only part of the bear trap that got installed was the tracks on the flight deck. The idea was to see if the ship's active fin stabilizers and its shorter hull could mitigate the need for the full bear trap setup. But the lack of bear trap is not the reason why there are no helicopters on board this ship. The hangar is simply too small. See, a CH-148 Cyclone helicopter does indeed fit inside the hangar, but it was later discovered that it wouldn't have enough wiggle room to sway back and forth during higher sea states. Plus, the hangar lacks the height required to install an overhead crane, which is necessary to perform the Cyclone's maintenance during prolonged deployments. As a result, this class of ships does not currently house any helicopters on board. That said, helicopter problems go beyond the AOPV platform. Canada's 26 Cyclone helicopters have proven to be frustratingly unreliable due to parts shortages and antiquated data links. And while the Canadian Armed Forces are not getting rid of the CH-148 Cyclones, there's a major shift toward unmanned aerial systems. HMCS William Hall has a crew of 65 sailors and can embark an additional 20 personnel. It's by far the most comfortable naval ship I've ever been on, and you'll see why. The ship's crew live in cabins that sleep up to 6 people. The setup makes life a bit easier and more manageable compared to having large berthing areas with 20 to 50 people. Each cabin has its own bathroom, shower, and lockers. There are 3 lounges on the ship where the enlisted sailors and officers can go to take a break or hang out when they're not on duty. It's nice to have windows in these rooms, but like any other warship, once it gets dark, light discipline should be maintained to conceal the ship in the darkness. If that wasn't comfy enough, there's Wi-Fi available in most areas of the ship, powered by Starlink, fast enough to video call your family and stream movies before going to bed. Or you can always hit the gym to keep in shape. In addition, this ship has 3 bars on board, located in the lower mess deck, chief's mess, and the wardroom. Of course, drinking alcohol is prohibited aboard Canadian warships, with one exception. I don't know if you knew, but there are not a whole lot of pubs in the Arctic. So during port calls, with permission from the ship's commanding officer, these bars sell alcoholic drinks. I bet the beer is ice cold. For these sailors, this is their home away from home for months at a time. So personally, I think it's a really good idea that the Royal Canadian Navy has provided all these amenities for the crew, most of whom are in their 20s. Anyone who wasn't part of the ship's crew stayed at the Embark Forces area, a 20-person berthing. These bunks are the largest I've seen on any warship. Even a 6'3" guy like me could sleep comfortably. The embarked forces share 3 bathrooms and 3 showers. While guests like us were not required to do any chores, it was strongly encouraged to help, which we happily did. But as comfortable as these ships are now, they've had quite a few serious hiccups. HMCS William Hall is one of the newest ships Canada has built in the past 25 years, because for many decades, the Royal Canadian Navy was underfunded. But as part of Canada's national shipbuilding strategy in 2010, multiple classes of ships are now being procured. Among them is the Harry DeWolf class, a new generation of Arctic patrol vessels with the William Hall as the 4th ship to join the fleet. Aside from a delayed and over-budget delivery, these ships suffered multiple breakdowns with their onboard cranes, excessive corrosion in some areas, anchor room issues, flooding, and drinking water contamination with lead, which was due to fittings and valves manufactured with lead-containing alloys that exceeded contract requirements. Sailors were provided with bottled water as a temporary measure. Another major problem occurred in the ship's enclosed forecastle. This is where crew members handle anchor operations, mooring lines, and other deck equipment used for securing the vessel. During high sea states, seawater would rush into the forecastle via the hawse pipe, where the anchor chain runs through, and flood that area. This would create a salty sauna environment that led to excessive corrosion of the equipment. But this problem has been mostly mitigated by placing an inflatable rubber bag into the hawse pipe opening and then securing it with steel enclosures. These covers are only removed when they need to drop the anchor. But these sorts of problems are not unusual for a brand new class of ships, and if anything, it's to be expected. On a brighter note, during the sea trials, the AOPVs surpassed some of their design requirements. They were able to break ice over 6.5 feet thick and also exceed their design top speed by over 1 knot. One morning, I walked up to the bridge as usual, and this is what I saw. It looked like we were on a collision course with a ship 3 times our size. Thankfully, it was just a RAS or Replenishment at Sea exercise with the German resupply ship Berlin. Coincidentally, Canada is building 2 ships based on the Berlin class. Nevertheless, this is quite a dangerous maneuver because as 2 large hulls move in proximity and parallel to each other for hours, they create strong suction and repulsion forces that can crash them into each other. So it's paramount that the person driving the ship is very experienced. You would think the captain would be that person, but he was just outside enjoying the view. Or was he? I always thought the helmsman was the driver of the ship, which is why I was so excited when I got a chance to do it myself. But in reality, it's the officer of the watch who's driving the ship, since he's the one making all the decisions on the speed and course of the ship. The helmsman is just executing those commands.
Sir. Okay. Selecting command auto.
Auto command selected, sir.
Good. And set course 055.
And before making any new changes, the helmsman has to seek permission.
Sir, permission to do the Arctic drift.
Yes, please.
But let's go back to the RAS exercise. Here, the commanding officer is in fact the person driving the ship. He's on the bridge wing to have better situational awareness while making constant adjustments. The officer of the watch relays those adjustments to the helmsman, who in turn steers the ship.
238. Steer 238.
Steer 238.
100 revolutions.
That's it. If the crew ever has to use this old-school wheel to steer the ship, it means something has gone terribly wrong. Normally, the ship is steered remotely from the bridge, while the rudders are many decks below.
This is our rudder. We have 2 rudders. They're run by these hydraulic motors, and it's chain fed. So whenever you want to go one way, this motor will turn on and pull the chain one way and turn our rudder either way.
The movements of the helm on the bridge activates those motors accordingly. But a lot of times the ship is on autopilot, where a computer would handle those continuous adjustments in order to keep the ship on a set course. But that doesn't explain why there's a comfy chair here next to the rudder. If for some reason the remote steering breaks down, the rudders can be controlled locally. These two actuators can be used to control the two motors that turn each rudder. And if the rudder motors fail, the final backup is this old-school hand wheel.
So one full turn is 1 degree. So it's a lot of turns to be getting your 32 degrees one way or the other.
You just need to move these levers down. And then this massive ship is being controlled by the hand wheel. Since the ship has two rudders, the exact same setup exists for the other rudder. And as for the comfy chair, whenever the ship is close to land, one sailor must be down here. So in case the remote steering from the bridge fails, they can move the rudders locally to avoid catastrophe. HMCS William Hall is a hybrid electric. Basically, it has two diesel engines that power up 4 generators, which in turn produce electricity. That electricity runs the ship's electric motors that turn the shaft and propellers. The ship has 2 main machinery rooms arranged in a forward and aft configuration, separated by fireproof, watertight doors. Basically, it has 4 diesel engines, lubrication, and a special gearbox. When doing quick and powerful maneuvers, like going from full stop to full speed, and even going full throttle in reverse, which by the way looked really cool to see in person, the propellers generate a huge amount of thrust. That special gearbox is reinforced to the hull of the ship and separates the propeller shaft from the motor. Otherwise, the shaft could push forward and damage the machinery. But the most fascinating engineering aspect of this ship wasn't the engine room. It was here, in the MCR. The Machinery Control Room, or MCR, is where during normal operations, just 2 engineering watchkeepers can control and monitor various engineering aspects of the ship. For example, to start and stop engines, pump liquid cargoes, monitor the power management system, activate firefighting systems, manage drinking water production, cooling systems, and many more. Basically, the vast majority of the engineering tasks can be handled from MCR, with only very specific things requiring the crew to be physically present in the engineering spaces. There are also multiple battle damage control system screens that are positioned throughout the ship. These touchscreens allow the crew not only to see the status of the different machinery, fire alarms, and so on, but also to control them. It's an impressive system, but the blueprint for this ship didn't originate in Canada. The AOPV platform is based on the Norwegian Svalbard class Arctic patrol ship. For example, both classes have bow thrusters, which allows the ship to park next to a jetty without external help. But Canada heavily modified the Norwegian design to meet its Arctic needs, like adding the enclosed forecastle, among other things. In terms of armament, the biggest difference between these two classes is that the Norwegian has a much larger 57mm naval gun. Similarly, the considerably smaller Danish Polar Class 6 Knut Rasmussen offshore patrol vessel are more heavily armed with 76mm naval guns. One explanation could be that the Nordic nations have larger guns because they're closer to Russia in the Baltic, Barents, and Norwegian seas. The Russian Navy recently commissioned its newest Arctic patrol ship, Ivan Papanin, and is building 3 more. As is typical for Russia, these ships have a greater number of heavy, visible weapon systems compared to their NATO counterparts, with a 76mm naval gun, 2 Kord machine guns, 8 Igla manpads, and countermeasure systems. The Ivan Papanin was designed to also have 2 close-in weapon systems, and carry up to 8 Calibre cruise missiles or 8 Uran anti-ship missiles. But in reality, those weapons were never installed. They're optional and rely on containerized missile launchers. If needed, Danes, Norwegians, and Canadians could also achieve similar capabilities by bringing manpads on board, or by loading Lockheed Martin's Mark 70 containerized vertical launch system on their flight deck. As you can see, these Arctic patrol ships from various countries are similarly and lightly armored. They're not there to fight each other, and the Canadian AOPV's 25mm gun is indeed the smallest among them. But it is suitable for domestic constabulary roles. When dealing with non-military bad actors, even smaller guns could do the trick, which is why the crew undergo firearm certifications as well. I was in charge of handling the ammo, if memory serves, and I even got some constructive feedback about my work. But once the shooting stops, it's time to clean up the mess. Operating in the Arctic comes with very strict regulations on waste disposal. Things that can be safely burned, like paper and food scraps, are processed through a high-efficiency incinerator. But things like plastic, glass, and metal cans have to be stored on board until they can be disposed of during a port visit. To save on space, glass jars and bottles get crushed into little pieces using a crusher machine. And metal cans can run through a compactor that presses them into small squares. Whatever gets flushed down the toilet, also known as black water, makes its way to the black water system below the deck, where it gets cleaned to an acceptable level appropriate for disposal into the non-restricted areas of the ocean. There's also gray water, which is all the other wastewater that comes from bathroom sinks, the kitchen, and dishwashing machines. It's important to remove any food grease from the gray water, and this machine does exactly that by separating the grease and storing it inside a different container. It seems like a lot of work, but out in the Arctic, you have to be self-sufficient because you are on your own. There are no ports, no roads, and no facilities. There's only what you bring with you. This is why AOPVs carry on board anything from landing craft that can take the crew to shore, or even a pickup truck, ATV, or snowmobile as needed. But no one really knows the full capabilities of AOPVs.
These ships are so new that they really haven't managed to convey or operate in enough different environments and missions to really show the full capability of these ships.
That's because AOPVs can be equipped with different mission packages, whether it's diving operations, rescue operations, or scientific missions. But some of the packups that the ship could theoretically take haven't even been invented yet.
So I think when people say, hey, what can you do? It's hard to classify that because we don't know everything yet what these ships can do. And it would be a shame if people didn't explore those avenues in order to fully realize what these ships are capable of.
For us, this was an unforgettable experience. We're immensely grateful to the Royal Canadian Navy for this opportunity, and to the amazing crew of HMCS William Hall for giving us a chance to experience the Canadian Arctic with them, and to share it with you.